Hello, everyone. This is Zara Altair, the Story Bodyguard, and this is a fabulous book party for Tales from the Park, the second book. So we have two books out now, and today we have Tim Hammill and Max, co-authors of Tales from the Park. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about Tales from the Park. It's a story. It's a series of stories told by Max.
Hello, everyone. This is Zara Altair, the Story Bodyguard, and this is a fabulous book party for Tales from the Park, the second book. So we have two books out now, and today we have Tim Hammill and Max, co-authors of Tales from the Park. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about Tales from the Park.
All right. So there's a number of stories. They're all short stories, and Tim wrote them so that you can read them quickly. They're short reads. So we have Nowhere Man, All Buicks, Great and Small, about a Buick and a lost man. Oh, Mac. The Earth Moved Under My Paws, Pete and Rita, Kaving, Heidi Fang, and the Virgo. So welcome, Tim.
Hey! I got Mr. Complainer here. Yeah.
Yeah.
The public awaits. They want to hear all about you.
Yeah.
Come on. Get a good shot, a close-up. Yeah. All right, that's enough.
Okay.
Oh, Zara.
Hi.
Hi.
It's good to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Tales from the Park is the first book for me. I come from California, San Diego, and I've been writing on and off for a good portion of my adult life. Nothing to the extent of what this book became. I mean, I don't know if it was ever intended to become the 83,000 word monster that it did. And I realized that at 83,000, it's kind of small for lots of novels. But it is a collection of short stories, and that's probably what allowed me to get through it, was the fact that they were all shorts. And as I got used to it, and as Max started to talk to me more, they became longer and heavier, more in depth. I don't know what else to tell you. What else do you want to know?
That's it. And just for the people in the audience, you can post your questions for Tim in the questions section. We're on Crowdcast, so we have you have a section for posting your questions to Tim, and we'll answer them. And then one of the features of Crowdcast is that when we answer, I press a little magic button, and your answer will be time-stamped. So anytime you come back, or anyone else comes back and they want to hear the answer to that particular question, they can pop right to that section in the video. All right, so that was a little technical introduction for Crowdcast. It's kind of fun because people can join from Twitter, they can join from Facebook, and also from Google+. So I'm very happy to be using Crowdcast for our interview. So for folks who are new and missed the book launch party when the very first Tales from the Park came out, tell us how you and Max got together.
How we got together. You mean how we started talking to one another?
Right.
He would hang out at my desk, usually in the inbox. And a lot of times he would crash on the printer, which startled him from time to time when the machine started up. But it was it didn't take very long. I was at a point with my writing that I was looking around for something light and easy, and I often wondered, like a lot of cat parents, or even dog and cat parents, where do they go? What do they do? And people have been putting cameras on animals lately and watching where they go. And usually cats will go off to a bush and go to sleep. And you get to see numerous hours of the bush not moving.
Right.
But I had envisioned or had fantasized about um, adventures that he would be going on and stuff that he would be doing. Max is very territorial about his humans and about his home, but he also gets out and wanders around. And an amusing story, he actually had a place that he went down the alley with a woman who almost took him in. She came up to see us, and she had a scrapbook filled with photographs of him hanging out in her house, and she'd feed him and I'm sure that's where his weight problem started. And eventually she moved away, and lucky us, she didn't take Max with her. But it was one of those things that stuck in my mind, and it was like, where do they go? What do they do? What are their lives like? It's so different when you're 12 inches high and
Right.
everything's so big around you, and you've got other things to deal with. And the trailer park where we lived was filled with characters, and actually people, when we were at the first trailer park, people would come up and say, "Oh, I know him," and they would start telling me stories about him being around their place, or this and that and the other, and they knew he was not a stray because he had a collar and an ID tag on, right?
Right.
And so I guess one thing just led to another, and I started tapping out some stories on what could be, what could happen once he gets beyond the confines of the backyard or out the front door, or even what just happens when no one's around and it's just him or him and baby, and they're doing cat stuff within the course of the day. I mean, they don't sleep all the time, but yeah. So that's kind of where it developed from there.
Okay. All right. So, we all know that as a writer, characters can take on a life of their own. And what kind of surprises did Max give you once you started working together and telling his stories?
Because I knew him as a real life roommate, everything about Max became super logical. Though what surprised me was that he started talking to me, when I would sit down at the keyboard, and he never stopped. I have never experienced a full-bodied character ever in my writing. All my characters were compilations of other people that I had known, in my past, in my life. But he came to me created. I mean, he was 100% from the get-go. It was almost as though he were writing and I weren't. And maybe it's because I had him as a real cat in my life. I didn't really have to um, go very far to see a real thing.
Right, but you know, I mean, you had cats before in your life, so part of the surprise, I think, was this cat. You know, um, how was this? How was this cat different?
Well, he was blessed with an awful lot of personality, and he, as you experience, he's got no problem raising his voice and letting us know what's going on with him. But I never once thought of those other cats as something to write about. And it was as much as a surprise to me as it was to anybody, or to you when I first told you about it.
Mm-hmm.
The first story was actually kind of different. Max was part of, he was a character within the story. He, even though the story wasn't about him, but it got me to the second story, which was about Baby. And because there were two characters, Max and Baby, then it started me into relationships and how things could work between two characters. And later I revised the first story. After Max and Baby, all the other characters started to appear, and pretty much everyone in the park was grist for our mill. And I attribute an awful lot of that to the people in the park, because an awful lot of them were characters. An awful lot of them had jobs within the park. There's always somebody out there that's making some kind of shenanigans, or they're just flat out troublemakers. And all I had to do was have them interact with Max. It was actually very simple.
Right. So Max never stops talking to you. And now we have book 2, more stories. And do you feel there's anything different about book 2 than book 1?
Well, the stories in book 2 are pretty much more action oriented. They show aspects of his personality, his loyalty. He's a good friend. He has a combination of being fearless, and to a degree he's a little, I don't want to call him stupid, but a little ignorant. An awful lot of what would be ignorance is just him moving through, the human world, right? So there's all kinds of stuff that is new to him. It doesn't stop him from going there and being involved with, appliances in the house, or cars, or a number of other things that as humans we all take for granted. I mean, in all Buicks, he winds up dealing with the car, and actually that happened to me when I was a child. It wasn't a stretch for me when I was a little boy to pull that gear shift lever and go from park to neutral. For him, it was just all he had to do was stand on it, and his 15 pounds made the gear shift move. But it's another example of just, who would have thought that he could possibly be involved with something like that could turn into a near disaster.
And he has so many near disasters.
Curiosity drives him on.
Right. And more stories are coming out. There's 2 more books after this, so there are going to be quite a few Max stories and Tales in the Park. And I think one of the things that's so fun when reading these stories is how Max deals with all these different situations in the world around him, and that you have, taken the people who are in the park in his neighborhood and made them an integral part of his cat life.
Well, yeah, and it's really normal. I'm just pumping in stuff that makes it, exciting or whatever. As the chapters unfold, we also find out about his life as a kitten, as a stray on the streets, how he longs to get back to his cat family, his cat mom, and his litter mates. But the moment he hooks up with his human mom and dad, and when they move from the beach to the trailer park, which is in the East County in San Diego, there's no way for him to find his way back to that house, right? And so he wants to be on this quest to find out more about his cat family, and he won't give up. If Max is about one thing, he's about hope.
Oh, I think that's why people so easily connect with him.
Yeah, if you look at the reviews, people are saying, mostly gals are saying, it wasn't hard for them to fall in love with him, and you'll love him too. He has lots of nice qualities. He's almost like a Gary Cooper type of hero. Remember Gary Cooper?
I do.
He's not as tall.
Yeah, and yes, he has that. He has that sense of nobility. I mean, as being a human being, Gary Cooper as a human being, and Max as a cat. But there's this sort of inherent nobility and trustworthiness, which is, I think, part of what attracts readers to Max's personality. I mean, his spunkiness is what gets people involved. He's very spunky, and he's just not afraid of anything. He's always out to investigate. It's just with his natural cat curiosity. He's out, and it's pretty much what gets him into trouble is he's pretty much, goes out and he's like, oh, what's that? And then things start to happen. And I think part of it is his catness doesn't always understand what human beings are doing.
Right.
Beings are a mystery to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's take a look at our hero, Max. Why don't you read us a little bit from the new book? I think there's a story, it's called Kabing.
Kabing.
Max actually gets arrested in this story and goes with the police. He's gone. Anyway, this is an excerpt from that little story, Kabing.
The squad car's rear door opened, and the canine officer said, I'll have to look around in the back with Luke. Maybe there's another party goer we missed. When Luke's paws hit the blacktop, his head came down as my ears snapped forward. I scooted backwards behind my dad's leg. Dad's hand hovered above me when the shepherd lunged straight at us. The cop who held its leash hadn't attached it yet. For a fraction of a second, everything stood still. Did I say everything? Well, everything but me. I turned and made a beeline to the back of the deck. My heart pounded in my ears. The shepherd's pointed ears were just visible over the top step. I had maybe 2 seconds before total disaster would be upon me. In between our deck and Melissa's carport cover was a line of lemon trees. I drew myself down into a coiled position, building tension in my rear legs. I felt the deck rumble with the jolt of 130 pounds of mean police dog. The policeman's voice grumbled, shit. My first day with this dog, and all hell breaks loose. Now was my time to act. I made the leap to the metal handrail, then kabinged, very gracefully I must say, straight up to the nearest tree branch just as the shepherd snapped at my tail. I always forget about my tail. I wrapped my front paws around the branch. My hind legs dangled like a monkey's. It wasn't going to hold me for very long either. I made myself as comfortable as I could and looked down at my antagonist. He jumped up at me, but his weight carried him over the handrail and onto the ground below. Meanwhile, his handler was trying to get around Stan's truck, while the other officer had his hands full with Melissa and her boyfriend. The police dog took a second leap at me, but he fell short. Feeling safe and tired of his antics, I leaned down as much as I dared. I'm sure he thought I'd made a mistake. He barked a couple of times and made another attempt at me. As he rose, he seemed to move in slow motion. With his teeth bared, his dog face was getting closer and closer and getting bigger too. His front paws moved as if he were swimming. Being the local king of SWAT, I took dead aim on his nose, which stood out for the offing. My claws were extended to the point where they hurt. I cut loose and swatted my target with all my might. My index claw made contact as he came up. I watched as the claw sank in deep, really, really deep. Dad's voice rang out, "Max!" As the dog fell away. Blood spray filled the air as if it came out of a garden hose. He was yelping before he hit the ground. A bit of flesh fell from the tip of my claw as it retracted.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's a pretty exciting moment.
He got his ounce of flesh, I guess.
Right.
Things aren't going to turn out real well in the near future for Max that night.
Yeah, it's quite an adventure because the dog is just the beginning in this story, Kabing. You want to tell us a little bit about what Kabing means? Kabing is one of those Maxisms.
Maxisms. He would, he still does, though not as much anymore. He'll come right up to like a fence or a wall, and he'll sit there and he'll force himself down, right? And he'll build tension in his hind legs. And then when he jumps, he just goes straight up. And it made perfect sense as we would watch him do this, that all of a sudden there would be this, it would be like pulling a trigger or something on a device, and he would just spring up. And I don't know, he was kabinged up there.
That's a great term. And for those of you who missed it, Max has a lot of Maxisms, and in book 1 there's a whole chapter just about Max and his Maxisms and all his little distinguishing characteristics. It's a real fun read. That chapter's called The Maxter. And Max was telling me that on Twitter, one of his Twitter followers, actually there were 2 of them, they're 2 cats that lived together, and their mom got the book and was going to read to them, and Max told them with stories like this that he hoped it wasn't too frightening, to have a big dog come leaping into the air chasing you and stuff like that. So Max,
house cats out there.
Yeah, I know. They really are adventure stories, and they really are. And I think the humorous part comes from Max's vision of life. I don't know what else to call it. It's just like spunky.
Yeah.
So here we are. Now we're on book 2. So what's your favorite story? I know, as writers, we have parts that we really love and parts that aren't so much our favorites. And what's your favorite story in book 2 now that book 2 is out?
It has to be The Earth Moved Under My Paws. And it's because we were living in California, and we all have to deal with the prospects of earthquakes, right? And they talk about kabing. I mean, they come upon you with absolutely no warning, and bang, you get to deal with them. And as everyday people, we have an idea of what earthquakes are. Animals don't. All they know is some kind of dangerous thing that's happening, and they've got to move. Sometimes they pick up on it before, like birds and whatnot, and they take off. The idea of them being in this immediate danger and trying to run from it is what that episode, and how at the very end they're running through the fields and everything has changed from being in danger. And then there's a little part where Max actually rescues Baby. It's also in this chapter that Max takes us back in his past, and we get to see how he got separated from his cat family and how he started his life on the streets as a stray. But it's the run through the grassy field at the very, very end that I really like. They say in dreams your feet never reach the ground. That's why the story ends the way it does, with their feet not touching the ground. Although they are a couple and they are in love, they are also in love with the idea of being alive. Just the act of running together could be such a joy.
Oh, it's so true. The cats, did you know that cats exhibit that a lot? And I think you captured that in that story of the sheer joy of being alive, and especially after a terrifying event like an earthquake. And it's true, you know, that we as human beings recognize what it is when an earthquake happens, but to cats, it's inexplicable. It's totally inexplicable, and there's no way to get. Well, there's no way for us to get away from an earthquake either. But there's no. It's everywhere.
Yeah, but we can always do the duck and cover thing, or hide under a frame, or we're told not to go outside. Whereas I think animals, their first instinct is just to run.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, in the big earthquake in San Francisco, my cat had a litter of kittens, and she took all the kittens and took them under the bed.
Good place for them.
Yeah, she did. You know, it took me a while to realize it was really an earthquake. You know, and first it was an earthquake, and I went, "Oh, it's an earthquake." You know, having lived most of my life in California, and all of a sudden I realized, "Oh, this is an earthquake." You know, so I actually stood in the frame of the door, you know, because the trees were moving outside, and and I watched all the books fall off the bookcase. Yeah, that was, and then of course the lights went out. Anyway, it was the 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 kitty the kitty actually knew before I did. I think it was her taking all the kittens under the bed that clued me in that this was a serious earthquake.
Wow.
And that it was really time to, you know, do the earthquake thing.
Yeah.
So I have another question for you about Max. Yeah, when he came to you as a character, when you first thought of him as a character to write about, did you think of him as a hero? You know, the Gary Cooper cat, you know, did you think of him that way when you first started writing about it?
No, I didn't dismiss it. But I think at the beginning I saw him as a guy who was just trying to survive. Now that I'm talking out loud, I think that's why chapter 2, that's Baby,
Mm-hmm.
he had been alone so long and he was looking for a hookup, right? There's a difference between the camaraderie and love of his mom and dad. But after all, they're humans. And I needed to find another cat for him to just be with, you know, so they could rub up against each other, sleep together, eat together, go out together. Um, Once I had her making him her hero, then it wasn't difficult. He rescues her. It also allows him to get into trouble because there's got to be, baby is so docile that any kind of trouble that comes her way is totally uninvited. And so she needs to have like a champion like Max. He's also kind of a Tom Sawyer type of character. You know, he's getting by on his wits, and he has lots of times that things innocently lead him into getting into trouble. And this, a lot of time, because it's the human world, that trouble is overwhelming. Um, and he, in fact, is a troublemaker, but a lovable one.
Okay, so I want to remind the audience that you can post your questions for Tim in the question section, and we'll answer them here for you. So, Tim, I love that being a hero and the you know, protectiveness he has for baby, and I've certainly seen that. I've had cats all my life, and I've certainly seen that with cats who protect other cats. I had a cat once, Oscar, and he mainly slept a lot. He hung out on the arm of the sofa and draped his paws over, you know, and that was the thing. And I had another cat, Miss Sophie. She was a big white fluffy cat, but she loved to go outside. And all of a sudden outside there was this terrible cat fight noise and kitties and fur flying and you know. And Max, and I'm sorry, Max, Oscar got up from the sofa and goes, well, I guess I better go deal with this. And he went outside, stopped the cat fight. The other cat went away. And then he came back in and was like, okay, that's done. And he went back to napping. I mean, it was just hysterical. It was, you know, problem taken care of, back to sleeping. So let's take a look at Max being a hero. And cat fights, and you have an excerpt from another story. The story's called The Burglar.
Burglar.
Yeah.
It's because the cat has the antagonist has he's a white cat or grayish, but he has a swipe of black across his eyes and his head, so it looks like he has a burglar's mask on. You know. All right. I dropped down onto the door sill and slipped out before the screen door had shut. I snuck around my dad's legs as he turned to answer Mom when she yelled, "Damn that cat, honey. Max just got out and he's on the deck." I went around the corner and stood at the top of the steps. At that moment, Victoria, a broom in her hand, was swinging it at my new nemesis. She almost got him, too. But he dodged all of her attempts and looked terribly upset with her. Winded, Victoria dropped the broom to the ground. Thinking she was finished, he crossed over to the street. As he did, Victoria made one last mighty effort and swung her broom at him in a wide arc, inches above the concrete. If she had connected with him, he would have left in a hurry. Not this alley cat, no way. He stood his ground, ears pinned back, and with a deep hiss, he turned. In the blink of an eye, he leapt onto the broom and swatted at Victoria's legs. She screamed and fell backwards onto her back steps. Taking his time, my foe turned and strolled away from her as if he owned the place. At the corner of her trailer, he backed up to the wall and let loose his scent. Now this beast had gone too far. But for The burglar's point of view, going too far, was exactly his intent. Like all bullies, he always pushes to see who will and who won't push back. Mom poked her head out of the doorway. Dad spoke up, asking, "Are you okay, Victoria?" As Mom pushed Dad to the steps, she yelled out, "Do something." "It's okay, Mom," I thought. "I could take care of this bad boy myself," and jumped from the deck onto the blacktop. As I dashed across the street, the burglar looked at me straight in the eye. His eyes were dark, maybe even black, and showed no emotion as he reared up. I could see the muscles in his hind legs bulging out. His scraggly tail switched back and forth, slowly, not expending too much energy. He was saving himself for the battle to come. He was old and 20 pounds at least. His head was gigantic, much bigger than I had realized. And with that swipe of black fur across his face, it made him look dangerous. No, evil. Because I had to cross the street to confront him, I had lost some control over the fight already. It was a poor choice on my part, for when we made contact in the end, I knew his greater weight would tell. My only chance was to meet him as soon as I could, and that meant in the air. My claws made that tippity-tappity sound on the blacktop. The fur on my tail extended out like one of my mom's cleaning brushes. My ears were pinned back. I let out a deep, savage meow. That's my fighting howl, to let him know it was me he had to deal with. I left the ground and soared through the air, his claws extended. The burglar had now risen up to his full length. He leapt too, and met me about 3 feet off the ground. We hit each other with a loud, bone-crushing thump. All at once we were turning, snarling, a blur of gray and white fur. He probably couldn't distinguish where one of us started and where the other left off. Suddenly it was hard to breathe, and to make matters worse, this beast stunk. The odor was like the alley cat he truly was. We hit the ground hard. He was on his back and me hovering over him. Both of us were desperately trying to make contact with the soft flesh of the other's neck. From behind me, I heard a movement. I could feel a human hand on my back and the sensation of being jerked away from my foe. The burglar.
Whoa, the burglar. Yeah, so, if you're going to read these stories to your kiddies, make sure that you're in a calm, safe place. There, Max has some real adventures. He does. And I think one of the things that...
Though this is his first real big cat fight in the book.
It is. It's his first cat fight. He's had misadventures with people and misadventures with dogs, but this is the first time he's had a real cat fight with another cat. And I love that part about when Max says, he's going to have to deal with me. I think that's one of the things that I love about Max is whatever's happening, it's like, I'm going to take care of this.
Yeah.
I'm the one, I'll take care of it.
He's the man in charge.
Yeah. So, that there's, when you're reading this stories, you get so involved in Max. If someone, came up to you on the street and said, if you were a cat and you were out in the world, you go, come on, But when you read the stories, Max has so much personality that you instantly engage with him, and all of a sudden you are a cat, leading a cat's life and discovering the world through a cat's eyes. It's quite amazing. But the other part of it is that Max has all these personality traits. Just really incredible personality traits that make him, quite distinctive. So how did you come up with them?
Well, once again, going back to him as a real life creature. his personality traits. I mean, Max came to his human dad and mom at a time in his life when he had been out on the streets for months, and all he was doing was learning how to survive on the streets. I think the snort came from what possibly could be a deviated septum or something that was going on in his nose. Maybe he caught a cold when he was a kitten and it left some scar tissue in his nose or whatever. And when he lifts his chin and drops his jaw, he takes in air from his nose and through his mouth. And I think it doesn't go down real quickly. And so it creates this, I don't want to call it a reverb, but I don't know how else to refer to it. And when I try to do it, I can feel it on the top of my palate back almost into my throat. And so it's like a vibration that happens. To a degree, he sounds like a little pig, you know. And it wasn't difficult to run with that. And then his purr is real rough. And I don't think he ever learned to purr from his mom. So he's going from a place of instinct and maybe from other cats that he met when he was on the street. So he's loud and he's rough, and that's kind of him in a nutshell. I don't think he was maybe but 10 to 12 weeks old when, I can only speculate, but he was only about 10 or 12 weeks old when he actually became on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had been out on the streets for quite some time when we got him. And when he came to his human mom and dad, he had been out on the streets for all those months. And I think he was just learning how to survive and how to fight. And he never really totally trusted anybody because people, always have ulterior motives, and or maybe they don't know that he's a stray and they're just they think they're helping him, but maybe they're not. So when he met his mom, it was actually because of the water that drove him to her, and then she responded by taking him in. It was instantaneous. He wasn't going back outside.
Oh, yeah. And then, you've been with Max a long time, and I know that sometimes people have authors kind of get tired of their characters. They want to go write a different story, a different characters, all those things. So how do you sustain your interest in Max?
Well, I suppose I love him. And but almost as important, maybe in a way more important, I really, really like Max. And I mean, there's times when he's a bad cat, but he's Max, and it's you can't really punish him and whatnot. But it's also at those times when he's being just himself that it's not difficult for my imagination to step in, and he starts talking to me about this and that and the other, and I visualize him doing this stuff. And it's real wonderful for me to see him in my mind's eye doing all of it. It's really easy and not an effort at all. Sometimes the most difficult part about the stories is getting him out of the house, because he can't really do it himself. Somebody's got
to have the human
to open the door for him. And
right.
a lot of times that's the most time-consuming thing that there is for me.
So you know what the story is, but you don't know how to get it started. You have to make up a way for Max to get out of the house.
Yeah, and it's got to flow into something that will take him someplace. It's always nice to have him start with some sort of innocent thing, yeah, I mean, it's almost Hitchcockian, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
where the wrong letter gets delivered to the hero's or heroine's um, mailbox, and then total disaster follows. It's the same thing with Max, but he just, rather than running from a lot of disaster, he wants to know what's going on, and he'll stick his nose in there sometimes when he shouldn't.
I just wanted to tell you that Mary Shenton in the audience says, I am enjoying this chat.
It's Mary.
Yeah.
Hi, Mary.
So as a writer, how does it feel to have a book series?
Oh God, as an author, I have to say, having this series, it's thrilling. There's people that are meeting Max for the first time, and they're talking to me about his adventures or this or that story, and they want to know what's going on in the stories, how I managed to come up with the stories. It's fantastic for me to hear all this. I'm mesmerized by the words as they tell me about something that at one point just only lived in my imagination. And I think too that they like Max as much as I do. It's as if it really wasn't my intent. It should have been to make him, more lovable and accessible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these are your first books, and they're coming out in ebook format, which is sort of, the new thing for books. Um, how do you like that format?
Well, I was a little dubious in the beginning. I mean, you hear all kinds of stories about this and that happening with ebooks, or people having difficulties, with the technical end of it and stuff. Um, but then you also hear about people that are being able to quit their day job and move on into full-time writing, and they're actually making a living at it, and they're getting the book out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, doing the when you start shopping your story around to agents and every so often a rare publisher, you get told no an awful lot. And because Max is so niche, um, I got lots of really nice rejections. I mean, we all want to see um, our work, in hardcover and have that weight and that impact that goes along with it. But it was the realization of the first person that in the UK that bought the book. Now this is, in I think he was in England, that you could go internationally so quickly, which was really a thrill. Um, I mean, hey, we might even see Max in the Macy's Day Parade one of these times.
So it's true. Max is available through Amazon pretty much all over the world. It's available.
Yeah.
And so it really is quite phenomenal for getting your work out in the world, and it is very exciting. I can imagine what it must have felt like to go, oh my goodness, someone not in the United States but in another country,
or even just in different
yeah
towns in different states, beyond friends and family and a certain amount of colleagues, right?
right.
And yeah, it's really outstanding.
And another thing too is Max had exposure online and in another country. He was on a blog. You want to tell us about that?
It's called Katzen World, KATZENWORLD, .co.uk. And it's put together by a fella that has I think at least a couple of cats, and he promotes everything feline. They even have a store. You can buy catnip toys and all kinds of different things. And he's got a fair amount of exposure cooking, and people were responding to his blog from not only in the UK, but also from like Sweden and France, Germany, um, all over the place. And there would be these little blog comments about my cat really likes to, or has really likes Max and is happy to have met him, and people responding to purchasing the book. When is it going to come out in Nook? A lot of people were asking about that. We'll probably be on Cats and World a couple, 2, 3 more times, I hope.
Yeah, I know. And Cats and World also published a chapter from book 1. They published Baby, which is such
Baby.
a sweet story. So I think that was very exciting to get that kind of exposure. You know, let's talk just for a minute about writing for a very specific niche. You know, there are really broad categories like, you know, romance or science fiction, or fiction, and you've taken you know, a really brave step, I think, in going out and defining a niche that is one thing. It's cats. It's cat lovers. I think, you know, that we had one dog lover say, you know, I don't have any cats, but I love these stories, and it was like having my own cat. But I think that, you know, really defining your market, you know, from a writer's perspective, defining that market makes it very clear for readers and very clear for people who are interested and who are going to buy the book. They know exactly what they're looking for. Not what they're looking for, but what they're going to be getting with Max, you know, is a cat who tells stories about being a cat. And
Yes.
and they're just a lot of fun. They are. So, and I know you have something really exciting coming up later this year, I think it is. You're going to be doing a live reading in Arizona.
Well, hopefully this will happen. It's a new business. We've yet to get into what could happen, right? But a new friend of ours is Melissa at, and I'm going to struggle with this name, La Gatara Cat. They're in Phoenix, Arizona, and if they're not on the ASU campus, they're very close. And they do, in essence, it's a place where you can come and interact with cats that are adoptable. Okay. So it's got that thing cooking for it. You can sit down with a cup of coffee or some tea. I'm pretty sure that they'll allow you to bring your own cats, though you'd have to call and find out. And there could be other kinds of events. They're also chatting about bringing in your cat and doing a yoga lesson, you know, and stuff like that. So it all remains to be seen, but it sounds like a real neat format, and the more the merrier, I'm pretty sure. But no one's we haven't really talked about any kind of readings yet.
Okay.
Okay.
But I know that cat cafes are something that are
Oh,
springing.
they're huge in Japan.
Yes, they are, and they're springing up in all over the world now.
Yeah.
And people are loving them. People are really loving one. There's one here in Portland, Oregon, and so they're, things are happening with cat cafes. There really are a lot of cat lovers, and so I think it's really fun. Tim, this has been just a really fabulous conversation. I want to thank you for being here and sharing your author insights about working with a cat, and a little bit about your experience as a new author and getting your books out in the world. It's very brave. A lot of people don't go that far. So congratulations, and congratulations on the success of Tales from the Park. It's really been great, and I know that Max has a lot of interaction over on Twitter, and Max is Max Tales 123 on Twitter. So if you want to go connect with Max, you can connect there, and he posts about the book. He posts a lot about cats, and he talks to a lot of cats on Twitter. So you can follow Max there on Twitter. Any last words you have for readers, Tim?
For readers, what I would like to say, in the form of like a shout out and letting people know that this wasn't entirely 100% me, even though it was, and that sounds like a contradiction, but I had help, and that came to me in the form of the Red Mountain Writers Group, and they have helped me tremendously. They've embraced the character and helped me along with so much. My grammar is even getting a little better, which was almost impossible to think of, you know. I can't think of anything else.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And for those of you who want to read more Max, be sure to follow Max on Amazon. He has his author page, and all of his books are listed there. And also, if you want the latest news for Max, you can join his own Max Gang. And I posted the link in the chat section here. So you can join the Max Gang, and Max sends out notices when books are coming out, and also when we're doing live events like this. So thank you so much, Tim and Max, we saw at the beginning, and thank you, audience, for being with us. You've been great today, and
you wore him out. He's over there sleeping.
Well, that's a typical cat thing. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. This is Zara Altair, the Story Bodyguard. Bye.